All right, so this is asking us to find the roots. So that means I'm looking for two numbers that I can add together to make 2, and then I can multiply to make -5. So I'm going to look for the factors of -5, which would be -1 and 5, and 1 and -5. And as it turns out, neither of these add up to make 2, which means it is not factorable. Which means I need to use the quadratic formula. And it's -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So I'm going to label my a. So here a is 1, b is 2, and c is -5. So that's what the coefficients. So I'm going to substitute that because remember my equation is y is equal to ax squared plus bx plus c. So in this case, there's nothing in front of the x squared. So my a is 1 and b is 2, c is -5. So that's what I'm going to substitute into the equation. So -b, so I'm going to write a negative sign not to confuse myself, and then look at b. b is 2, so -2 plus or minus the square root of 2 squared minus 4. A is 1, and c is -5. Over 2 times 1. Now I'm going to continue simplifying. So -2 plus or minus. When you're simplifying, the square root is kind of like brackets. You do what's inside the square root first. So 2 squared gives me 4. And I'll do multiplication in the same step. So -4 times +1 times -5. So I have negative, positive, negative. These are going to make a positive number. So that's going to give me positive 20 over 2 times 1 is 2. I still need to continue simplifying inside the square root. So 4 plus 20 is 24 divided by 2. There are ways of simplifying this further, but we're going to explore those next year. So all we're going to do now is we're going to break it down. This means add or subtract, because remember we need two solutions because it's a parabola. It may or may not cross the x-axis twice. So one x is going to be positive and the other x is going to be negative. So x is going to equal -2 plus the square root of 24 over 2. Or x is going to equal -2 minus the square root of 24 over 2. So in one scenario, I'm using the plus sign, and in the other scenario, I'm using the minus sign. And then I can simplify using my calculator. So depending on the calculator you have, you might be able to put this all in one step. In others, you might need to do square root of 24, write it as a decimal. I like to do things in one step to keep a more accurate answer, but -2 plus the square root of 24 divided by 2 gives me, and I'm going to round to 2 decimals, so it says 449, so the 9 is going to make the second 4 increase by 1, so I'm going to write 1.45. And the second one, again, I'm just going to put it in the calculator in one step. So -2 minus square root of 24. Sorry, my phone went off and I got cut off. So I have -2 minus the square root of 24. That gives me this, and then divide the answer by 2 gives me -3.45. So that means these are my two x-intercepts. And when I graph them, they're going to be decimals. So I have 1.45, so somewhere between 1 and 2, and negative 3.45, so somewhere between 3 and 4. Those are the two x-intercepts. All right, so it says y equals 5x squared plus. All right, so it says y equals 5x squared minus 4x minus 3. So once again, we always test to see if we can factor it. So I'm looking for two numbers that I can add to give me the middle term, which is negative 4, and then I can multiply to give me the product of the first and the last number. So that would give me negative 15. And then looking at the factors of negative 15, so negative 1 and 15, well, the difference here is too big for this to happen, but I'll list it there. 3 and 5. That doesn't work. So that means I can't factor it. I'm going to need to use the quadratic formula again. You don't need to write this part out. If you look at it and you can see it's not factorable, you can jump right into the quadratic formula. This is just for me to show you. Also, the quadratic formula works for anything. So even if something is factorable, we can still use the quadratic formula. It's just that the final answer isn't going to be a decimal. It's going to give us a whole number. But factoring is preferable if it is factorable because it's faster. But even if I had taken a factorable equation and put it into the quadratic formula, it would have still worked. So I'm looking for the values of x that's going to make the equation 0, which I don't think I wrote in the last question. I should have made it equal to 0 first. But and then I'm going to put it into the quadratic formula. And the quadratic formula, I recommend you write out the formula every time just to help commit it to memory. But negative b plus or minus, so one answer is going to be positive, the other's going to one answer is going to be plus, the other one's going to be minus. The square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. And I'm going to substitute these values. So here, my a, this is not working again. Here my a is 5, my b is negative 4, and my c is negative 3. So those are the numbers that I'm going to substitute into the equation. So a, b, and c. I'm going to substitute those in. So negative b is negative 4. That's what I was saying in the first one. First write out the negative sign and then check what b is, because here it's going to be negative, negative. But we'll deal with that later. Plus or minus the square root of b is negative 4 squared minus 4 ac over 2a. Now let's simplify. Negative, negative, two negatives make a positive. Negative 4 times negative 4 gives us positive 16. And then negative 4 times 5 is negative 20. So negative 20 times negative 3 is going to give us positive 60. Over 2 times 5 is 10. And then I'm going to simplify. So 4 plus or minus the square root of 16 plus 60 is 76 over 10. So that means I have two options for x. X is either going to equal 4 plus square root of 76 over 10, or x is going to equal 4 minus square root of 76 over 10. 10. Those are the two that I need to now put into my calculator. In this example, I'll do it one step at a time. So if I take the square root of 76, that gives me 8 so the more numbers you leave when you round, the more accurate your answer is going to be. So I'll round to 3 places. So 8.718. So it would be the same one over here. Okay, so now I can put that part into my calculator, just in case your calculator is one of those that are harder to do all in one step. 8.718 equals, divided by 10 is equal to 1.272. Or I'm just going to round it to 2 decimal places, actually, 27. And for this one, 4 minus 8.718 equals, notice I'm pressing equals and then divided by, it's just gonna, sometimes if your calculator doesn't do BEDMAS properly, it might throw it off. Divided by 10 is gonna give me negative 0.47. So those are my two possible, those are my two x-intercepts.